Hello, this is Alan Biggs welcoming you to the Ref Show. And this week's headlines: You Are the Ref demands action on diving. Managers, PFA, FA, listen up to our experts. Keith Hackett and Mark Halsey are here. And a trio of commendable performances show the way back for referees in what has been a troubled season. Welcome to Keith and to Mark. The biggest issue is to come. Time for action, we say, or you say. No ducking and diving on simulation. But first, big game and a big game performance to match, I think. Keith, Manchester United 3, Liverpool 0. Martin Atkinson.
Yeah, I thought that there was a bit more physical effort from him, a bit more concentration, awareness. And look, he's an elite referee in UEFA. Therefore, there is an expectation that that's the level of performance that he should put in, week out. So it shouldn't be the exception, it should be the rule.
But he started to hit that level now, hasn't he, Mark, after a difficult few weeks at the start of the season. There was obviously a big decision in this one, where there will be an examination of it. The second goal for United, Mata was clearly offside.
Yeah, I think what Keith said, I thought Martin, he refereed well last week up at Newcastle Chelsea, and I thought he'd done extremely well this weekend. And you know, I've refereed them that game a number of times, and you just want to come out of it unscathed, don't you, Keith? You want to go into the game, no controversies. I mean, sometimes you can't escape, and you want to go into those games, manage the event, manage the players, and which I thought so. I thought, you know, if there's a little bit of slight criticism, I thought he was a little bit inconsistent with his yellow cards for deliberate pullback, shirt pulling. But other than that, you know, you'd take that, and Martin has to be pleased with his performance. But going on to the offside, I mean, for me, at that level, that is a Mike Malarkey should be getting those right.
It wasn't clear, though, was it, whether Van Persie had flicked it on or not, or made contact with his head? That was the problem, wasn't it? Because when the cross came in, Mata wasn't offside, but he was after the flick from Van Persie.
As an assistant referee, you'll be looking at that, and for me, from where Mike is, he would have to think that Van Persie has flicked that on from where he is.
You can ask the question.
You can, yeah. And I just think perhaps he's just had that moment's lapse of concentration. As I say, Mike Malarkey, at that level, he's an excellent assistant. He referees in the Champions League. He's been to 2 World Cup tournaments. So you would expect someone of Mike Malarkey's calibre to get that correct.
OK, but overall, well done, you're saying, Martin Atkinson on that game. And also Mike Dean, who I think both of you have felt has had a very, very good season. West Brom 1, Aston Villa 0. No quick queries at all about Kieran Richardson of Villa being sent off for a late challenge. And there was a diving incident in this game as well, wasn't there? Pocinoli of West Brom and a caution.
Excellent position. Mike was right there, absolutely spot on to caution, and it was good to see the player acknowledge it as well by putting his arm around Mike, knowing that Mike's got this right, and the players are trusting him. And it was a tough game. It was a tough Midlands derby. Absolutely. There was lots of tackles going in, and some say perhaps some of the challenges bordered on a red card. But I think he got his involvement right, judged his level. Got the reckless challenges right, and he got the one that mattered, the one from Richardson, and that's all you could ask from a referee.
And finally, in this trio of good performances, and I say an example to follow, and hopefully a trend to continue. Mark Clattenburg, Burnley 1, Southampton 0. I've not got a single incident of note written down.
Well, I have, and the one that was absolutely superb was a real impact, explosive sprint to put him about 3 yards away from viewing the foul and awarding the penalty kick. It was an outstanding piece of refereeing.
It couldn't have been closer, really.
No. And if you look, not one dissent at the award of a penalty. And I think Mark's positioning, his positional play and his movement has got to be by far the best in the Premier League at the moment.
Get him out every week. Him and Mike Dean.
I think they're outstanding.
He's not getting big games, though, when he is out, is he?
No, he's not.
We'll look and see what the appointments are from here. Going back a week, just to pick up on this and a final word on this, you were both quite strong about the Fabianski sending off, the Swansea keeper sent off for denial of a scoring opportunity, Dogso against West Ham. There was an appeal which both of you backed. You felt that Swansea should win the appeal. The FA kicked it out.
Well, one has to look at the panel that's making that judgment. You know, it's supposed to be independent. I'm sure it is, but I've got to say that those guys sat in that panel making that judgment do not, quite categorically, do not understand the law, because the criteria for dismissal right, was not fulfilled. That was an incorrect decision by the FA. Absolutely got it wrong in law.
But and this can cause confusion.
There is. I mean, there was 2 guys on that panel over the age of 70. No disrespect to the age, but I mean, over the age of 70, reviewing. You know, we need modern day people that just retired that know the criteria in law. And you go on to confusion. I mean, I blogged the Arsenal Newcastle game on Saturday, and if you're saying, if the FA are saying and the PGMOL are saying that is a red card for denial for Fabianski, which we unanimously said it's not, then what about Dummett on Welbeck on Saturday when the award of a penalty there? Now that's more clearer. Than what the Fabianski one is. So are we all confused? Well, yes, we are.
Well, Chris Foy was the man in the middle at that Swansea-West Ham game with the Fabianski incident. It takes us neatly on to the fact that he was in the middle at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. This was Chelsea 2, Hull 0. Any number of talking points in this one. Let's clear up the least contentious. Tom Huddleston sent off, already booked, a straight red. Absolutely no argument on that one.
Correct.
And I think what it is that it's unlike Tom to put in that sort of challenge. And I just think that the players had lost their discipline because they'd lost their trust in Chris Foy to make the correct decisions that went on in through that game. Now, if you take the decisions, you can look at Chelsea's first goal. For me, it was a clear foul by Mikel on Hull City in the centre circle. They went on to score. You can't argue with Tom Huddleston. You look at Gary Cahill's challenge. I mean, that was worthy of a red card on its own. But
well, we've got those. But I think Keith had some sympathy with Chris Foy here about the diving thing. We'll talk about the potential red card challenge and the escape of Gary Cahill in a moment. But Willen and Costa of Chelsea were both booked for for diving, and I think you upheld
correctly
both of those correctly. The Cahill one, after perhaps he should have been sent off, Foy was quite panned for that.
Rightly so.
Steve Bruce very critical, but it's not just Foy to blame here, though, is it?
Well, I think first of all, it's a clear dive. You know, there are some times when you can say a player might create a dive to avoid injury. Let's get that one out of the way. This is a dive to gain a penalty kick, and I have to say that when I was in charge a few years ago, we had a growth of simulation in the game, and we suddenly said, right, the way to stop this is through the managers. So we had meetings with the managers. I stood up, showed a number of clips, and
should this happen now? Is this what you're saying?
Well, I think that the Premier League is transmitted around the world, and the Premier League protects, quite rightly, its image, and this is about the damage that is being created to the image of the Premier League. Therefore, I'm surprised the Premier League have not acted. They may well have behind the scenes. They've done that in the past, but I think that at the end of the day, this lack of communication, public communication, if you like, from the general manager of the PGMOL, is what is lacking, because he should be setting the pace of these things. He should be saying, look, it's not my referees to blame here. It's not the referees committing the offences. It's the players. So let us try to work off the field of play to prevent these sort of damaging acts.
You criticise Mike Riley there, but we'd hear nothing about this from Gordon Taylor at the PFA, Mark.
I think you're right. I think the PFA have an obligation to its members. But coming back to what Keith said, I mean, for me, that was the easiest one out of the three.
It was.
That was the easiest one out of the three. So yes, you can look at the referee. I mean, I go back to that's Chris Foy's first game refereeing Chelsea since he refereed him last season, March the 15th at Villa Park, where he sent off Willian for 2 yellows, sent off Ramirez correctly for a serious foul play challenge, and he sent Mourinho to the stands where I didn't think they managed it as they should have managed. So he had an indifferent performance there. Is that on his mind? Does he not want to? He don't want to feel the wrath of Chelsea
whether
again.
It is or isn't, there's no action from the PFA or the LMA, the League Managers Association.
I think
surely there's got to be action from these parties.
For me, there's got to be a panel introduced on a Monday that sits on a Monday that looks, because it's not only in the Chelsea game. We saw it last week in the Man City game with Milner. We saw it again at Sunderland, West Ham with the penalty for Sunderland.
Swansea City won.
Yeah, and Swansea yesterday. But for me, get a panel of a recently retired referee, recently retired players, two players or a manager and a referee, and you sit on a Monday morning, you go through it, and for me, you look at it, said, yep, that's simulation, 2-match ban, and the stakeholders, the chairman of the clubs won't like that, and that's the only way. It's a disease in the game, and we've got to stamp it out.
But I said quite categorically to the managers a few years ago, I can guarantee you one thing, we're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because the quality of these dives, the active simulation,
so good.
Yeah.
Are so good. If you were caught, as Foy was caught out of position, then, you know, although I have to say on that one with Kale, I thought he got a good view. But I think generally, you know, the referees have got to detect. Then it can not always detect.
And you've said effectively as well, he should have been sent off earlier for a challenge for which he only got yellow.
Can I just correct something there, Alan? Because there's you know, a player does not have to make contact with his opponent to receive a red card.
Yeah.
And this is you know, I mean, I heard the comments on television. I'm saying, you've got that wrong in law.
Yeah.
A challenge which is reckless with excessive force that endangers the safety of an opponent, right, is sufficient. So he can actually go in that way.
So correcting a misapprehension there, Keith. Can we just breeze through the rest of the programme, right? Because we've dealt with that quite a long time. Some games that went okay. John Moss, Leicester 0, Manchester City 1, Kevin Friend, Crystal Palace 1, Stoke 1. A late Palace penalty claim there, an appeal for hands against Eric Peters. I don't know whether there was a view. It was a pretty outside claim, I think.
Yeah,
really,
I think once again, it's not deliberate.
Not a clear one.
Not a clear one, and John's got that.
Robert Madeley, 7 yellow cards. There were 7 yellow cards in quite a few games at the weekend, including this one. Swansea 1, Spurs 2.
Well, let me tell you about Madeley, because if he wants to become a top-class referee, right, he needs to put an engine somewhere in his body, because his movement and positioning around the field of play is appalling. I mean, I couldn't understand some of the positions he took up. I thought towards the end of the game, where he was fatiguing, he looked as though he was carrying an injury.
Could I come in there?
Yeah.
I know he was carrying injury, because I'm reliably informed that after the game he had to have his ankle strapped up because he sustained an ankle injury during the game.
Should he have been out there?
No, but if you pick up an injury, you always have to come off. You know, you're better off, because you like Keith noticed it, so obviously I noticed it.
Yeah.
You should always come off. And going back to the 7 yellow cards, I have to question the appointment of that game for Robert. Because obviously he's only refereed 3 games this season in the Premier League, and he's come out of it regularly unscathed. But there was a few inconsistencies with his yellow cards and his recognition of careless and reckless challenges.
Not fit enough.
Okay, well, going on to Phil Dowd, and you've raised that question with him on occasion. Sunderland 1, West Ham 1. There was a penalty incident here. Gomez penalty for Sunderland, certainly controversial. Perhaps shouldn't have been given. Mark.
Yeah, once again we're looking at simulation, aren't we? With that, whether Sam come out and said, well, the assistant give it. Well, I'm afraid that in that area, as I say, Phil Dowd's got to be taking the lead. That if he's going to shout down the headset first, isn't he? And Dowdy's just going to have to say no. But for me, I think Phil's experienced enough to. I mean, he's just got to make an angle.
He has to take responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, because he's there, but he's not. Do you know what I mean? He just hasn't created himself an angle. He's directly behind the player, and he's just got to come off his line of path of control, and he sees that.
Okay, well, just
if you talk to any manager, Alan, one of the things that I'm seeing is that they're fatiguing during the course of the game. They're not lasting the full 90 minutes. And part of this is because of the age. As you get older, recovery takes longer.
We'll talk about that in a future ref show. It's an interesting topic. Finally, Lee Mason in charge of Arsenal 4, Newcastle 1. I know Mark was on ref cam for this particular game. A Welbeck goal disallowed. I think we've covered that because you said it shouldn't have been. TOT, borderline red card, but he stayed on. But most of all, I want to talk about a player staying on his feet here when he could have dived.
Yeah.
And he got rewarded because he scored.
That's right, and I mentioned that in my blog, didn't I? That he'd done well to stay on his feet, and let's commend a player for staying on, because he could have gone down. He could have quite easily gone down, and I think full marks to Cazorla for staying on his feet and finished a wonderful goal.
This is what we want to see.
Absolutely.
And particularly see a player get rewarded for doing exactly that. We'll see what action is taken on diving, because quite clearly something has to be done about that. Keith Hackett, Mark Halsey, thanks very, very much indeed. Join us again next week for a particularly festive edition of the Ref Show. See you then. Bye.